I'm going to have to work on the deadwood. The deadwood here is still fresh. That means it's quite easy to work with tools. Once your wood dries out, it gets too hard to be worked and you can break your tools. So I'm going to do that now first. I'm only going to use hand tools. I like to show the fiber and the grain of the wood in the deadwood. And as it then ages and it starts to crack, the cracks will follow the patterns that the tools have left behind, or in fact where I've pulled out fibers. This is a wonderful old yew, which means the bark is quite flaky. But it is good to then start exploring around deadwood sections, because sometimes, like here, whole parts of the bark have already died off and you can clean that up. This reduces places where animals can overwinter. It reduces fungal infections. Overall, it is just good for the health of the tree to remove this. What I'm going to do, I have this very nice tool, and this is specifically made for deadwood. You can see the beak is at an angle and has very, very mean pliers to it. That way you can edit the deadwood, you can split it. Let's try with left. I'm not a lefty. You split it and you can tear it. Now this deadwood needs to go, because in the final design, if the tree is standing like this is a pin that comes directly at you. So this is going to be a very short stump. Always break deadwood down rather than up, because if a branch breaks in nature, it will break down and then tear downwards. So now you have a fairly natural looking stump, and then tear the bottom half down. If you think that you're going to tear all the bark down, you can also just take smaller sections off, right? You don't have to take a whole big part. Now if you don't have this tool, it's not a problem. You can also use your regular small pliers and use that to clip open the deadwood, and then use yin pliers to take the individual fibers and tear them down. Like that. Another tool I often use when I'm working deadwood is an old set of knob cutters. So these knob cutters were once broken, the beak broke out, but they now make an ideal set of deadwood working tools. What you can see here is that there's a natural side branch above which this was cut, and it's nice to leave this in place because it will look natural in the end when it's still there. And I'm going to try to peel off here the top section with my broken pliers. See, it first just snaps and then I can just twist it and off. Next to that you take your yin pliers and you can then grab a hold of the piece that you have just broken off and start twisting it off. That way you pull long fibers. To stop tearing down too much, you can already predefine in the bark with a knife where you want the bark to end. And that way the bark will not tear further. Of course, the natural wood fibers will tear further, so you have to be a little bit careful and delicate in this rough work. So you first do this quite rough, getting bigger sections off. And then you can slowly start taking smaller and smaller pieces. Note, I'm not going to style the deadwood completely. I'm just going to bring the first shape in, because now that is much easier than when it is dried. For this there's of course also a special tool, and this is this metal hook with a cutting blade in the end, and you can use it to go underneath and just peel the bark off. Of course you have to do what I'm not doing and be careful with your hands, because it's quite easy to tear this into your hands. And this whole process really is a little bit of a delicate work. You have to go slow and careful, because once you have pulled the deadwood off, can't bring it back. Note, I'm doing all this sort of deadwood work before I start wiring the rest of the tree, because now I have easy access and I don't run the risk of pushing over any branches that I've wired. This is that, and there's a small live section going along the trunk down here. I can remove a bit more of the dead here, so that later on you get a very nice feature when you look at the trunk. That being done, I'm going to wire out the tree as much as possible, leaving on as much foliage as possible. That's a specific request from the owner. If it were mine, I would have cut back the branches, plucked them, left only very little foliage on it, waiting for the backbudding to happen next year so the pads can fill out. But the owner said, no, I want it to be quite full already on my bench, and I don't mind if the backbudding then takes a little bit longer. I'll wait a little bit longer as long as it looks nice on the bench.